Here we go. As a result, come, Miss Cruz. As a result of Jefferson's Embargo Acts, the American Merchant Marine Fleet found itself very unproductive. As a result of Jefferson's Embargo Act, you know that the American Merchant Marine Fleet was pulled in and was very unproductive. Something else was very unproductive. Something else was very unproductive as a result of this. And that was American capital, money. Money was very unproductive. As a result of the Embargo Acts, ladies and gentlemen, you know that the American Merchant Marine Fleet was pulled in, and you know that that this would be one of the dimensions of what will be the War of 1812. Problems over shipping would bring about this war. But when the fleet was pulled in, a significant economic development occurred. When the fleet was pulled in, Americans with money, with capital, began to ask a very important question. How can we make money outside of trade? Write that down. How can we make money outside of trade? I suppose I have to ask myself a question. I want you to help me. What were the sources of revenue for the United States government up until, let's say, how did the United States government make money up until about, let's just say, the end of the War of 1812 to 1815? How did they make money? Help me. Point number one. They sold land to people through the sale of land. The government could make money through the sale of land. How else could the government make money? Help me. Think. How else could the government make money? Go ahead. Thank you. Through the activities of the Bank of the United States. Good one. How else could the United States government make money? You can think. Believe me, you know. How else could the United States government make money? Come on.
Taxing for the product, taxation.
Tariffs. Money that would be paid on imported goods. A tariff is a tax on an imported good. The United States government, there were always rich people who want imported goods. And so if a good came into the United States, you'd have to pay a tax on that good. You follow me? So look at this. Listen to this, pal. You're going to pay a tax on imported goods. As the young lady said correctly, the Bank of the United States was making money because if people borrowed money from the Bank of the United States, some of that money would go into the Treasury. That's good. The sale of land, that would be the way the United States could always make money because there was so much land. You left out something. Something's left out. Something rather demonic. Something demonic is left out that you know. You've got it registered in your head. Maybe you're sitting on it. Something's left out. Go ahead.
The buying or selling of slaves.
Thank you. Good point. A $10 tax on any imported slave. That would last up until what year? With the hand, please.
1820.
That would last up until what year? Is this a guessing game? Is this a guessing game? Why don't we go through every damn year? What's the year? It's got to be in your head. Period. That's where it's got to be located. Go ahead. 1808. Up until 1808. And after 1808, there were to be no further importation of slaves. So as you can see, there is a very, there really aren't that many sources of income. I suppose I could mention one more source just to round it out. Write this down. The Congress passed a tariff in 1816. There is the tariff of 1816 was a tariff that would tax imported goods, and I just mentioned that to support the idea of the tariff so that at least you have something concrete. There are not that many sources of income for the United States government. There are not that many sources of income. Hold on for 1 second, though, okay? 1808 for the slaves, 1816 for the tariff, okay? One very important point that is necessary to put in your head. The population of the United States would basically grow about 10 times every 50 years. Write that down. The population would increase about 10 times in a 50-year period. So that in 1790, there's about 3.2 million white people and about 500,000 African Americans. In 1790, there's about 3.2 million white people and about 500,000 African Americans. In 1860, there will be about 5 million African Americans, and the total population of the North and the South will be about 31, 32 million people. Write that down. White population in 1860 will be about 31, 32 million people, and there'll be about 5 million African Americans. Okay? So every 50 years, you can count that the population will basically expand about 10 times. Every 50 years, the population will grow about 10 times. So what? So what? Why is this significant? So what? So what? Just listen. Why is this significant? Help me. Go ahead.
Because more people need property and jobs.
Well, no, you're not answering my question. Are you listening to me? Young lady, are you listening to me? Are you sitting up the way you ought to be? Because that's what you, this is a college. This is not the 5th grade. Don't you love it? Go ahead. Why is this significant from the land point of view? Because listen, ladies and gentlemen, everybody, when I say everybody, an enormous number of people wanted either free land or cheap land. Write that down. Large number, this is basically an agrarian society. This is basically an agrarian society in which people hungered either for free land or for cheap land. So that simply meant that, God bless you, that simply meant that there was always an interest in owning property. And owning property would ring the cash register for the United States government. Get the idea? And the more people that were here, the more the cash register is ringing. Are you there? Can you see? You can see that, right? I have to mention this point. I said that this is basically a rural agricultural society, as it was. However, write this down, from 1790 to about 1860, from 1790 to 1860, we witnessed something. We witnessed that the urban populations are growing dramatically also. There is an explosion of urban population. Write that down. There's an explosion of urban population from 1790 to 1860. So what? Listen to this. let me give you an example. Take Boston. In 1790, the population of Boston is somewhere between, in 1790, somewhere between, I've seen some very dramatic differences in numbers, okay? But somewhere between, let's say, 30,000, let's say about 30,000 people. About 30,000 people. By 1860, by about 1860, the population is about 200,000. Okay, not quite 10 times, but about 200,000. Continue. In New York, the population is about 40,000 in 1790. By 1860, something happens. The population is almost 900,000. Uh-oh. To go from 40,000 to 900,000? Is that a big increase? 40,000 to 900,000? There's a lot of stuff happening. What's happening in New York? Help me. Why is this really, I want you to think, okay? Why is this really clicking in New York? Some things are obvious, some things are not obvious. You started it, come on.
They built the Erie Canal.
He makes a very good point. He makes a very good point. In 1825, write that down. In 1825, the Erie Canal will open. In 1825, the Erie Canal, thank you. That's a good point. In 1825, the Erie Canal will open. That means that we can sell bottles of water from the Port of New York, take them up the Hudson River, and sell them all through the Great Lakes region. We can take ties. We can manufacture ties in New York City, take them up the Hudson River, and distribute them all through this large geographical area. We can take raw material from the Great Lakes. We can take pike. How many of you have ever eaten a fish called pike? You have? That's a real hunting fish, isn't it? You got to be careful. That'll eat your arm off. Big teeth is right. Good man. Why did you ever eat pike? You caught it? Where were you? In Connecticut? Okay. Unusual. We're going to take pike from Michigan, from Lake Michigan, and we're going to sell it in New York City. We could do that because of the Erie Canal. That opened up a big market. What else is happening in New York? Go ahead. Well, we're not quite there yet, but yes, there will be a there will always be an infusion of immigrants. There'll always be an infusion of immigrants, and as time goes by, your point will be a very good point, and that will grow enormously. But we're talking up and just till 1860. The only large immigrant group that's in New York by 1860 is the very significant group of the Irish. Write that down. In the 1840s, 2 million Irish will come to the United States. 2 million Irish will come to the United States. They will have a very high birth rate. The Irish will have a very high birth rate. And they will play a pivotal role in the economic and political development of New York. No question about it. We've got the Erie Canal. We've got the Irish. We've got the pike from Michigan. What else is happening in New York? What else is happening in New York that is going to be a big deal? Right. It is going to be a center for money. New York will be a center for money. How many of you like money? You're into money. Good, good. New York will be a center for money. It'll be a center for banking. It'll be a center for the insurance business. And it will be a center for investing money. People go to New York to find money because they have an idea. They go to New York looking for money. Are you listening? They go to New York looking for money because they need a certain kind of investment bank. That's what you find in New York. Get that down. So New York then, New York has the advantage of being, even at this point, a financial capital. Okay? So New York, it is, I find it ironic, ladies and gentlemen, don't you, that in this basically rural agricultural society in which 90% of the people are subsistence farmers, look at what's happening in the growth of urban areas. Something's happening there, isn't it? Look at New York in terms of the enormous expansion of population, the introduction of the Irish, the introduction of their labor and their diversity. The Irish bring not only big families with them, but they also bring the Roman Catholic Church and all that that institution will mean. And New York will be a center for money. But why do we need, Professor, why do we need centers of money in this country? Why do we need money? Help me. Why do we need money? Why do we need a center of, why do we need money? With the hands. No, it has to do economics. It's not obvious, okay? You listen. You listen. That's why you're here, to listen. Why do we need money? Go ahead.
Money, more advances and stuff?
He's saying it, but he's saying it obliquely. He's not telling me straight. He's telling me obliquely. He said it, but he didn't tell me straight. What he really wanted to say is, we need money in order to create progress. That's what he meant. Write that down. We need money in order to create those tools, those developments that will progress the society. Are you there? We need money. Money brings us progress. We need money to bring us progress. Ladies and gentlemen, stop for a second. When I first started today, I talked about the embargo acts. I said something suffered. What was suffering, did I say? Help me. Go ahead. What was suffer? That was a result. But what suffered? Capital suffered. Capital did it. Money. It was. You could not make money because the merchant marine ships were all in port. There was no money to be made with trade. If there's no money to be made with trade, and as the gentleman said to us, without developments, there can be no progress. There's a problem, isn't there? If we can't trade, how can we progress? If we can't trade, how do we develop? We need something new, don't we? We need to do something new with the money. We need to do something new with the money. What do we do new with the money? What do we need to do that's new? We decide we have to start making cloth. We have to start making ready-made clothing. We need a revolution in textiles. Write this down. A revolution in textiles. Write this down. A guy named Francis Lowell, L-O-W-E-L-L. Francis Lowell was a Boston guy from a wealthy trading family. The Lowell family was involved in the merchant marine business. Francis Lowell went to Great Britain. And in Great Britain, he began to examine the textile factories that made clothing in Great Britain. In particular, in order for the textile, good thick notes. In particular, in order for the textile business to develop, there needed to be the creation of what was called a power loom, the power looms. How many of you have knit? Don't be ashamed. You like to knit? How would you like to have your own little loom that you have a foot pedal? Do you have that? Do you know people who do? Okay, they have a foot pedal, and what do they do with the foot pedal? Go ahead. Nice and loud.
They sewed for clothes.
Well, what do they do though? They take, go ahead.
They spin the cloth.
They take thread, and they take thread from a sheep, from wool, and this machine turns it, and tightens it, makes it tighter and tighter and tighter. That's what it does. And then with a needle, you take that tightly drawn string, and you can crochet. And through one particular pedal, you can do that. It would take a long time to create the clothing everybody's wearing today, wouldn't it? It'd take a hell of a long time for everybody to create the clothing that people have on them with that. The power loom works differently. The power loom, don't write this down. The power loom takes hundreds of pieces of thread and weaves them together. The power loom takes hundreds of pieces of thread and as a result of water power, turns a wheel. And when you see a power loom in operation, listen to this. You can hear the power loom. It sounds like this. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. It's the turning of the mill, taking all of the threads and doing this. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Creating a bolt of fabric. That's how you get a bolt of fabric. You get a bolt of fabric by pushing hundreds of pieces of thread together. Do you get the idea? The British created a power loom system. Francis Lowell goes to Great Britain. Francis Lowell goes into the British mills, where he proceeds to memorize the operation of the power loom. Write that down. Lowell memorizes how a power loom operates. He steals the information. Have you noticed how important stealing is in life? Have you noticed how critical it is to steal? He steals the information. My fly or just this here? The mic. Oh, thank you. I thought you told me my fly was open. Okay. That also is important, I might add. Thank you very much. Are you listening? Lowell returns to the United States. He returns to the United States, and with the assistance of a guy from Massachusetts by the name of Paul Moody, Lowell and Paul Moody together build a power loom. Lowell and Paul Moody together build a power loom, and the Lowell family will create what's called the Boston Manufacturing Company. The Lowell family will create the Boston Manufacturing Company. And in the Boston Manufacturing Company, good notes, and in the Boston Manufacturing Company, wool goes in one door and a sweater comes out the back door. In other words, all aspects of working with the fabric create a finished product. Write that down. All aspects of working with the product take place under one site. They have created what we would call, what would we call this? What do we call this? With the hands. What do we call this? It's a line of production, yes, but it's a factory. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a factory. Be quiet. God save me. Lowell and Moody create a factory. And they've begun what will be a revolution in not only using capital, but they've done something else, haven't they also? They've created a whole new technology. They've created capital, they've used capital, they've got a whole new technology. We're ready for a major, we're ready for a major economic development in American life. Can you see that? Hold on one second. Don't forget. Because this clothing, write this down, the ready-made clothing that they are producing, the ready-made clothing that they are producing is appropriate for an increasingly dependent population. The population of the United States is going to grow ever more dependent. And as the population grows ever more dependent, it becomes the factory system and cloth making finds an ultimate home. Questions? Questions? Go ahead. Hopefully this is something significant.
You answered it.
Did I? Yep. Okay. Stop there. Do you see what just happened? People with money in Boston, in particular, felt very frustrated. They felt frustrated because they couldn't make any money with trade. People with money do not sit on their money because money doesn't grow if you simply sit on it. You have to utilize it. They believed that the way to utilize it was for America to become a manufacturing power. Manufacturing clothing, ready-made clothing was a bit of a challenge. Write this down. Manufacturing clothing was a bit of a challenge. And it was a bit of a challenge because Great Britain was the dominant manufacturer of ready-made clothing and most other textiles in the Great Britain was the world's dominant manufacturer of textiles. Is there a problem with that? Is there a problem with Great Britain being the dominant manufacturer? Help me. I think. Is there a problem? Is there a potential conflict? Peter, is there a potential conflict? What is it? What might Britain do? Nice and loud. Not tax. No, you're not thinking. You're not thinking straight, okay? What might Britain do? Yes, sir. Not exactly. The end of the War of 1812. There's no more wars with Great Britain. We're partners now. There's no more wars. After the War of 1812, there'll be no more war with Great Britain. What might Britain do? Go ahead. Louder. Not exactly. The opposite. The opposite of what you said. You're not thinking, send all their caca here. Send all of their stuff here. If they send all of their cheap manufactured goods, all their textile here, what's going to happen to the factory in Waltham? You won't need it. They'll destroy it. Do you see the problem? So the United States goes to Great Britain to learn how to do it. They learn how to do it well. They create the Boston Manufacturing Company. They're fearful that Great Britain may dump all their cheaper manufactured stuff in the United States. Write this down. The tariff of 1816, is put on the books to protect the infant manufacturing industries in the United States. One more time. The tariff of 1816 is put on the books to protect American manufacturing. Can you see that now? Do you get that? We're talking about money. We're talking about business. The American manufacturing is just starting. It is very fragile. It easily can be destroyed. Most people want to spend less than more. Isn't that true? There are always people who want to spend more. There are always rich people. There are always people who will be invested in luxury goods. But the vast majority of people are very cost conscious. How many of you are very cost conscious? How many of you always look at prices? You should. It's reality. Price is a reality. It's a reality. And that was a reality here too. And so, in terms of money, American capital isn't, write this down, American capital is increasingly going to be directed. American capital, at this stage, is increasingly going to be directed in building those mills, those factories that are going to produce ready-made clothing, for an increasingly dependent population. When I say dependent population, I mean people who buy clothes as opposed to people who make clothes. How many of you have ever made an article of clothing? Anything? Okay, you made something. Now look at that. Put your hand up if you've made something. You've made some article of clothing. Look at how few people have made anything. How many of you have sewn on a button that's fallen off a coat? How many of you, listen to this. How many of you have ever fixed a hole in a pair of socks? How many of you throw the socks out right away? Out the window. Dump those socks. Do you get the idea? You throw those socks out in 2 seconds. And you throw them out in 2 seconds because you say, hey, what the hell? Get a new pair of socks. The coat lost a button, get a new coat. The ashtray's full, get a new car. Throw it out. Don't empty the ashtray. Just get a whole new damn car. Who had coffee this morning? Or tea? Tea, coffee, milk. You milk a cow? You wish you did. Okay. I believe you. You're up to it. You could do it. Anybody who's eating pike can milk a cow. Okay? But the fact of the matter is, are you listening? Fact of the matter is, you ordered coffee. You didn't even grind the beans. Never mind grow the beans. You are completely and thoroughly dependent. Do you get the idea? We are completely dependent. This society would be a society that would grow ever more dependent. And the people in the Boston Manufacturing Company, they recognized that cloth making was the way to go.